For 8 months, a predator hunted the streets of Tampa, leaving fear, bodies, and unanswered questions behind. Police were chasing shadows, families were desperate, and the man responsible believed he was untouchable. But everything unravelled because of one decision he never expected to regret: letting a 17-year-old girl live. She wasn't stronger than him. She didn't overpower him. Instead, she did something far more dangerous. While he thought he was in control, she was watching, listening, memorizing, and quietly building the case that would end his spree forever. And what she did during the worst 26 hours of her life would expose one of Florida's most terrifying killers, hiding in plain sight. Long before she ever crossed his path, fear was already a part of Lisa's daily life. At just 17, she wasn't living the carefree teenage years most people imagine. She worked overnight shifts, rode her bike through empty streets, and carried responsibilities that should have never been hers. Her childhood had been unstable, passed between homes, surrounded by adults who failed her. Even the place that was supposed to protect her didn't. Behind closed doors, she learned how dangerous silence could be, and how surviving sometimes meant staying calm when everything inside you was screaming. So when that early November night began like any other, wiping counters, watching the clock, waiting to go home, Lisa had no idea she was about to face the most terrifying moment of her life. But what no one could see yet was that everything she'd already endured had trained her for exactly what was coming next. The ride home had barely started when the car appeared beside her. 1 second the street was empty, the next a weapon was pointed her way, and every choice disappeared. She was forced into the passenger seat, blindfolded, hands tied, her world reduced to sound, motion, and instinct. Panic threatened to take over, but something else kicked in. As the car moved, Lisa focused. She listened to the engine, felt the turns, noticed the texture beneath her hands. Even through the blindfold, she caught glimpses: maroon fabric, a white interior, a single word on the dashboard that burned itself into her memory. The longer they drove, the clearer it became this wasn't random. They were moving fast, steady, like this route had been taken before. And when the car finally slowed to a stop, Lisa knew the worst part wasn't the ride. It was where he was taking her next. The moment they entered the apartment, time stopped making sense. Hours blurred together, measured only by fear and silence. She was kept under control, threatened, and made to understand how quickly everything could end if she resisted. But instead of shutting down, Lisa made a decision. If she couldn't escape, she would remember. She counted steps, noted textures under her feet, listened to voices on the TV, to sounds outside the walls, to anything that told her where she was. And when she could, she left parts of herself behind, touching surfaces, door handles, the sink, quiet insurance in case she didn't make it out. Then came the riskiest move of all. At a moment when one wrong word could have ended everything, she spoke to him. Not with fear, not with anger, but with curiosity. She asked why. She listened, and she made herself real to him. Someone with a story, a life, a reason to be seen as human instead of disposable. It was a gamble that could have cost her everything, but somehow it worked. After more than a day in captivity, something shifted. He dressed her, walked her back to the car, and drove without speaking. No threats, no rage, just silence that felt heavier than anything before. When the car finally stopped, he gave her one last command. Keep the blindfold on. Count to 5 minutes. Don't move. Then he added something strange, almost mocking, a description he wanted passed along. And just like that, he was gone. Lisa stood there, counting seconds that felt endless, unsure if this was another test or the final trap. When she finally tore off the blindfold, she wasn't in an alley or on the roadside. She was alone, standing near a church, alive. But relief didn't last, because freedom came with a realization. If he let her go this easily, she wasn't the first. And if she stayed silent, she wouldn't be the last. When Lisa finally spoke, detectives realized they weren't just hearing a survival story. They were hearing a map. Every detail she remembered, his appearance, the car's interior, the route he drove, even a brief stop she overheard, fit a pattern they had been struggling to see for months. Across Tampa, women had been vanishing. Their bodies turned up miles apart, left in places meant to erase them. The crimes felt connected, but there was nothing solid enough to name the man behind them. Until now. Lisa's description of the car narrowed the search fast. When investigators compared vehicle records with ATM activity from that same night, one name rose to the surface: Bobby Joe Long. On the outside, he looked ordinary. A job, a family, a man who blended in so well, no one thought twice. But behind that normal life was someone who had been moving through the city unseen, convinced his victims didn't matter. And now, because one girl refused to forget, his time was running out. When police finally brought him in, Bobby Joe didn't panic. He talked, calm, cooperative, like he believed he could control the room the same way he controlled his victims. At first, he admitted only to what he thought they could already prove. Then the tone changed. Investigators laid out photos, not accusations, evidence. One by one, the faces of women who had vanished from Tampa stared back at him. The room went quiet. And for the first time, the mask slipped. He tried to stop the questions, tried to slow things down, but the pressure kept building, and the story he'd hidden for months began to crack. By the end of the interrogation, the truth spilled out. Not one victim, not two, but a string of lives taken across counties, all while he went home to his family like nothing had happened. For the families who had been waiting in the dark, answers were finally coming. But for Bobby Joe, the story was only beginning. The sentence came quickly, but the ending did not. Bobby Joe was locked away for life, then sentenced to death, yet years kept passing. Appeal after appeal, new arguments, new delays. Time stretched on, while families were left waiting for a final answer. His lawyers pointed to injuries, mental health claims, and conditions from his past, arguing that something inside him had been broken long before the crimes ever began. But the courts kept returning to the same conclusion. The damage he caused couldn't be undone, and responsibility couldn't be erased. More than 3 decades went by, with his name fading from headlines, but never from memory. Until the day the state signed the final order. No more motions, no more pauses. And when that day arrived, one person made sure she would be there to see it through. When the moment finally came, Bobby Joe said nothing. No apology, no explanation, just silence. And in the room, watching from the front row, was the one person he never expected to see again, the girl who survived him. She didn't come for revenge, she came for closure. not because his end erased the past, but because it marked the moment he lost the power he once held, the power to frighten, the power to control. Today, she lives a life defined not by what was done to her, but by what she chose afterward. She turns survival into purpose, pain into protection, and fear into something that no longer owned her. In the end, this wasn't a story about a killer. It was about the one person who refused to disappear and changed everything by choosing to live.